Hey guys, what is going on? This is your old pal CHH. So we're diving into the Nightmare on Elm Street collection on 4K UHD. Now, we're starting with part 2, and if you're wondering why, well, we reviewed part 1 last year. That's the one that they put out, and I thought it looked good. I was pretty damn happy with the 4K of A Nightmare on Elm Street. So we're making our way through our collection, and the way we're doing this is going 2 films at a time. So we're doing A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 and 3, then the next reviews will be 4 and 5, and then, of course, we'll end it with Freddy's Dead and Wes Craven's New Nightmare. So, what do you say we dive right into it? And start with none other than my favorite A Nightmare on Elm Street film, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. What I consider to be the scariest A Nightmare on Elm Street film ever made. I don't think it will ever be topped in terms of how scary this movie is. It's just done with the absolute perfect tone. Actually feels like a nightmare to me more than any of them, and just the real sense of terror that I don't think any other A Nightmare on Elm Street film really captured the way 2 did. If you were like me, when you first saw this film, not in a million years did you think that this movie was gay. It just went right over your head. Which, okay, if it is cool, but why does Elm Street 2 work? I'll tell you why. Because it's fucking scary. I mean, it is legitimately scary. I'm going to say this, too. Of all the Elm Street films, the only one where I feel like the protagonist is truly terrified and scared is 2. Mark Patton's performance in this, there's something about him that I genuinely feel how scared he is. And that's what I like about this. That's what also aids to Freddy being so creepy. And I always say this too, and this is like kind of my thing. I say, my new nightmare, if you will, is part 2. What do I mean by that? People say, oh, this one broke the rules. Yeah, you're damn right it broke the rules. And that's what I love about it. So did New Nightmare. New Nightmare broke the rules too. But what I love about this movie is, like, to me, this is not Freddy Krueger. This is something darker. The devil, if you will. I look at part 2 as the actual devil trying to possess a human and use their body to get into the real world. Dreams aren't good enough for Freddy. Now he wants to come into your world. So yeah, I love part 2. I could talk about it all day. Now the thing about these movies is the menu screens, I wish they would have updated them. I really do. Or just used the theatrical poster art and stretched it out in 16:9. That would have been nice. They never did that for either one of these. But let's get into it. How did A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 look? I will say that A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 looked as good as I think it possibly could. I was pretty astounded by the difference in picture quality from this to previous releases. When you look at the Blu-ray release of this or the DVD release, I actually think that they age okay. I think the Blu-ray set that Warner Brothers did in 2011, I think if you watch those films and just take them for what they're worth, the picture quality, it's not bad. But I look at those releases and it's like, you know, the Blu-rays, they look good, but they also look flat. They look shiny and flat. And that goes out the window on 4K, that uncompressed image. I think when you see the image of Elm Street 2, you get a sense of the length of the bus. You can see the rows of seats, and it doesn't look like it's just a flat image. That's what I love about 4K. That's what I feel like 4K does for me more than anything. Is sharpness is one thing, but I feel like the image doesn't look flat. You can really get a sense of how big everything is inside the camera. Now, moments in this that absolutely stand the F out is after the bus goes off the rails, goes into the desert, and then all the ground starts to disappear. And there's those pillars. Well, you see the bus on one of the pillars, and you get that big wide shot. The detail in that was by far astronomically improved. It looked phenomenal. You could see the actual detail on the school bus from that wide shot of it hanging on that one pillar, leaning over. Remarkable. Freddy as a character benefits the most from 4K more than maybe any other horror villain I've ever seen on screen. Freddy looks absolutely phenomenal in 4K. Every scene you see him in part 2, it's just, you really get a sense of his makeup. He almost looks a little slimy in 2 as well, and you really get to see that shimmer and shine on him. And when you see him, the details in his face, everything becomes completely defined. That's something that was lacking on previous releases. You never got a sense of how good his visuals were in certain scenes, because you need it to be extremely defined and crisp to be able to see that. And boy, those scenes of him coming down the rows in the school bus, remarkable. Because it's interesting, when you first get the opening shot of coming down over the city and the buses or the town, and the bus is coming through, it looks a little hazy. It looks like almost like a matte painting. It's not matte, it's real, but it's almost like there's a out of focus kind of hazy look to everything. But it's once you get inside the bus and you see Jesse sitting in the back, it's like, oh, okay. But that scene when Freddy, when you see him come in, looked phenomenal. I will say, I think part 2, obviously, I don't think Jack Shoulder did this on purpose, because who would have known 4K would have been a format, much less DVD at that point. But I swear it feels like this movie was shot with the intention of being put on 4K HDR one day. Because what I love about this movie is Jack did not make a dark film. He didn't make a film that was really low lit and moody. He made everything, lit very well and proper. And that's where I feel like the HDR really got to work on too. Everything, especially the scene, he goes to the, that whatever that crazy bar is where he finds his coach there. The coach sends him to the school, and all of a sudden you see Jesse doing a lap. That HDR kicks in great when you see that red in the back of the gymnasium when Jesse's doing that lap. I was like, God, it looks so good. It was an experience like no other. This was a great 4K. I absolutely loved it. And I actually think that this movie feels like a juggernaut, huge film. Goes without saying that when you see the scene of Freddy bursting out of Jesse, it was phenomenal. And the scene that stole the show, and I think what every person is looking forward to with this 4K box set, I'd say maybe the scene in this entire series, is the pool sequence. When you see Freddy come out, oh man, it's great. And this goes to talk about the audio. Now, they have older audio tracks on here that you can swap to. You get used to the audio, the way it sounds as you're watching it. But boy, if you swap back to those old audio tracks and you go to the new one, you see how good these movies sound now. That's the best way to know. Swap them and hear it while you're watching. Amazing. The pool sequence in this, seeing Freddy's faces in this, in the pool sequence, I think this was so good that it could really change people's minds of the film. I was just in love with this. So the Nightmare on Elm Street 2 4K presentation, for me, there is a part of me that thinks maybe a boutique label, like if Vinegar Syndrome, TerraVision, or Arrow, or even Scream Factory, wherever they do their restoration works, if they have labs or whatever, maybe some of those could have got it to look even a little bit better. But for this coming from a studio, I got no complaints. This is going to get a solid 9.5 out of 10 for me. I love my Laserdisc, my Elite Laserdisc of Elm Street 2. I love my DVD set. I love my little Blu-ray set. I know it's kind of like a LOL set to a lot of people, but I do love them for what they are. But this is such a new, great way to watch it. I loved every minute of it. This movie looked phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal on 4K. Features that are on this are basically from the old releases. We will be covering the new features as they were when we get to them on the respective discs, which I believe is New Nightmare. But this is going to get a 9.5 out of 10 from me. Loved it. Let's move on to part 3. Guys, so here we are with Dream Warriors, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. What can I say? A lot of people consider this to be the best of Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm not there anymore. And when I watch this film, I don't dislike it by any stretch of the imagination. This is a juggernaut of a slasher film. I just think I'm liking a few other films more than 3. And I don't think I'm alone on that. Probably one of the biggest in scope. This movie definitely feels massive in terms of the cast, in terms of the dreams, in terms of the music. Everything is just bigger, and better. And there's nothing not to love about Part 3. Now, I do have a complaint I want to talk about with this. It has nothing to do with the picture quality, but I got to say this. I do have to say this. I do wish they would have been able to give us the alternate song that plays on the radio when Kristen is drinking her Coke and taking the coffee grinds. We get to hear a little bit of Into the Fire from Dokken. Love Dokken. Huge Dokken fan. I would have preferred that Quiet Cool from Joe Lamont. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I believe when this movie came out on VHS and Laserdisc, they replaced the Into the Fire with Joe Lamont's Quiet Cool. Joe Lamont is one of my favorite people of all time. Definitely check that song out and Google that. You can watch that scene with the Quiet Cool in there. I do wish they would have given us that. Obviously, Into the Fire is on this. I swapped the audio tracks. Into the Fire is throughout all of this. And I'm going to reiterate something I said about 2. When you're watching the film and you're listening to the sound, it sounds good. Especially, I'm talking about the big track, the brand new audio track. It sounds really good. You don't realize how much better it is until you swap back to like the 2.0, especially when you hear Into the Fire. Because even though they're giving it this tinny cassette deck sound, because it's coming out of that little stereo she has, that little boombox, even on the 7.1, it still sounds so much better. I mean, it sounds robust and great, but still retains that kind of cassette quality sound, that little 80s little, deck that she has. So that the audio on this, I think, is a huge home run. Now, in terms of the picture quality of Dream Warriors, just like 2, it looks phenomenal. The only thing is, and I'm not going to take this away from the picture quality, me personally, I know I'm a bigger fan of 2. I'm just being honest. And I know it's going to come across like I'm fanboying a little bit. Sue me, but I'm just being honest. But the beauty is you guys get to be the judge of this as well. This movie, I don't feel... It looks, the crispness of it and everything, of course, is just as well. The restoration, I believe, is just as good. I just don't like the way that this movie has that dimmer look. I had people say that they saw this in the Alamo draft houses and stuff, and they said the movie looked dark. I think the movie always looked dark. I think that's the way the movie looked. Now, that's not to say that this has any fault. No, I still think, all intents and purposes, this is the best you could watch this movie. Clearly. I just think that this is a darker film. I mean, everything about it, the hospital scenes, the lighting, it's very grayish. It's very dark toned. That's not to say that the HDR isn't going to work. I mean, Larry Fishburne, I like to call him Larry. Larry Fishburne's, Scrubs, that green pops, don't get me wrong. But this movie, I just feel, has a not as bright appeal. Like 2, Jack Shoulder, that whole movie is lit bright. They're inside the living room. Clu Gulager sitting on the couch, and everything is like the HDR really goes to work on 2. Like I said, I don't think Jack intended for this movie. I'm going to think in 2025 when this comes out on 4K, this movie's going to look great. No, but it just is what it is. Part 3 is a darker film. I just feel like the HDR goes to work more in 2 and really makes that movie pop more. This one looks great. Absolutely looks great. Don't get me wrong. I just think the experience is better on 2. But I'm not knocking it. Don't get me wrong. And the thing about this movie, too, is some of the effects that are like kind of optical stuff, like for instance, anything practical looks great. Whenever you see Joey's chest come up and you see come and get him, whatever it says on his chest, cuts, that looks phenomenal. But certain stuff... I wouldn't say it doesn't age well, but it just is what it is. For instance, the scene where the guy gets all his tendons out of his arms and he's getting stretched, all that physical stuff looks freaking great. But when you see Freddy as like that giant kaiju monster cutting the strings, it still looks modest because of that optical type of work. But visually, some of the scenes that really look great was the Welcome to Primetime. So great. That whole scene has kind of a bump up in the lighting and everything, and you really get to see the sharpness and detail in that. Also, the end of the film, once they're in the dream world, it's like you're going to get a level of definition that you'd never gotten before. I mean, this one looks fantastic. I genuinely just think that between the 2, and I'll kind of do this as I go along, as I'm watching the 2 together, I'll judge which I think is the better experience or the most fun experience in terms of watching it in 4K. Between these 2, I definitely think part 2, you're really going to be like, wow, that looks great. But it's not because this one has any technical fault of its own. I just think that this one, the 4K gets to go to work a little bit more with the brighter scenes and everything. But two great 4Ks. This one's going to get a 9.5 out of 10. This one's going to get a 9 out of 10. I think the audio is going to be the biggest jump for people on both of these two. So let me know what you guys think about these two, which ones between the two you prefer. And if you have any disagreements, please drop it down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think about these. Next up is going to be 4 and 5, and I think 4 may be contender for what might be the best picture quality out of any of these. We'll see. I've also heard part 6, Freddy's Dead, looks phenomenal. But we'll cross that bridge soon, guys. Thank you guys for watching. This is your old pal CHH. God bless you guys, and I'll talk to y'all next time. Huge, giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind-the-scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.